Harry Truman, Doris Day, Red China, Johnny Ray, South Pacific, Walter Winchell, Joe DiMaggio, Joe McCarthy, Richard Nixon, Studebaker, Television, North Korea, South Korea, Marilyn Monroe, Abraham and Isaac, Jacob fights with Esau, Rahab, Ruth and Boaz, David becomes king, Rehoboam, Asaph, Jehoshaphat and Ahaz, Hezekiah, Amos, Jotham and Jeconiah. We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire. No, we didn't light it, but we tried to fight it. Yeah. That is the tune found in the original Greek. How else did Matthew expect people to listen to 42 generations of mostly men? And out of 28 chapters in the Gospel of Matthew, why would I pick this one as one of the 4 we'd focus on in our journey through the Bible? Well, for starters, it's how Matthew and the entire New Testament begins, so that begs a second glance, doesn't it? Matthew is writing to a group of believers, mostly Jewish but also Gentiles, who are trying to find their way while living under Roman occupation and after Jesus' life and death and resurrection, and almost surely after the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem yet again. All the while, they are also trying to make sense of their Jewish faith that has started to diverge from the Judaism of their mothers and fathers, sowing the seeds of a new religion that will welcome in and eventually become one comprised of people of all nations and not just Israel. Now, we thought our myriad backgrounds and needs this morning were a lot to consider. This is who and into what context Matthew is writing. And remarkably, as the Bible always seems to do, it can still apply to us right here today. What better way to explore that deep theological work than to tell the story? And what better way to begin the greatest story ever told than with a boring list of dozens of names? According to Jewish tradition, the Messiah, or the Christ, or God's anointed one, would come from David's line, their King Arthur of Camelot days, if you will, and this king would deliver them from their enemies just like David did in his day. It was a powerful promise, teeming with hope for a people who were living in Babylonian exile 500 or 600 years earlier, before the life of Jesus. And certainly it remained a hope for the people who were currently living under Rome's oppression in the first century days of Jesus' ministry and the generation who followed him. So using his genealogy, Matthew makes a connection to this Davidic line. But he also goes all the way back to the beginning. Literally, the Greek begins this book by saying the beginning of Jesus the Christ, rather than what we see in our English translations, a genealogy of Jesus the Christ. He goes all the way back to the beginning to Abraham, the father of the Jewish faith. Why would he do that? Well, Matthew is making the claim that Jesus is both the Messiah of Jesus' hopes, but also the fulfillment of the covenant with Abraham that we learned about a few weeks ago, when God promised to bless all nations through Abraham. Now let me pause to note the obvious, that this is a distinct difference that helps to permanently carve out the divergence of Christianity from Judaism. As Christians today, we claim a heritage passed on to us that was born out of Jews debating and differing amongst other Jews until this new religion became what we ascribe to today. While that is the history, and it has tragically been abused to lead to horrific violence and anti-Semitism throughout the subsequent millennia, we as First Baptist Worcester can say with humility that what we believe need not come at the expense of or claim superiority over Judaism or any other religious belief. We may see a version of God's promises illuminated in new and profound ways in the life and message, the death and resurrection of Jesus the Christ, but we'd be fools to think that God doesn't fulfill promises and bring about profound messages of justice and love and hope through the teachings of other faith traditions too. Now, while my Christian faith sees the connection between Old and New Testaments in beautiful ways, I do tend to avoid language like Jesus being the fulfillment of the law or the covenant, though that is a fundamental facet traditionally of Christian belief. Instead, I opt for words that can mean the same thing to me, something like Jesus offers continuity from, expands the promises of, or the presence of, or the work of God that now includes the whole world. With that, let me come back now to Matthew's genealogy again. Remember, Matthew, the author, is a Jew, and he has rooted Jesus, also a Jew, deeply within the lineage of Israel. And he does this because it lays the foundation for the epic story he's about to tell in the subsequent chapters. But again, his nuances are important. Matthew is not, and he was not expected to chronicle the generations of Israel's forebears precisely like a Daughters of the American Revolution application. He was doing a bit of Billy Joel theologizing, connecting enough dots to make his point, and maybe it rhymed a little in the Greek, we don't know. Now, we haven't gotten to many of these stories yet, but you might remember them. These are stories that are latent within the names of someone like dishonest Jacob, or the seesawing faith of Abraham, or the abuses of power committed by royalty and patriarchs alike, and also the grace of deliverance by women and those deemed scandalous or as outsiders or who were not Jewish. Matthew is saying a lot in these opening verses, all without saying much more than a name. The message to the Jewish believers in Matthew's community is that, yes, Jesus comes from the line of David, fit to be the Messiah, but so did all these other people who are known for their mistakes. And to the Gentile believers in Matthew's community, the message is similar, that all the way back to the beginning, with Abraham, God desired to bless everyone, even them, no matter their heritage, just as it was with the outsiders in that list before them. To everyone in his audience, and now let's include ourselves, Matthew is proclaiming that God loves you and will always find you, which means each of you can have an impact within the story of God's promise. But if that sounds too frilly or like some progressive insertion into the story, let's look more closely at Matthew's list of names again. He brings this lineage down through Jesus' father, Joseph, not Mary. And that gives away the ballgame right there. Because the story right after this genealogy reports that Mary became pregnant, but not by Joseph. Which means the direct lineage of David and Abraham actually doesn't go through Jesus at all. At least not in Matthew's telling. The result is that whether you believe in the virgin birth or not, and whether Jewish by birth or not, the same truth applies. The line of Jesus is not a genetic direct line to God's promises. It's a spiritual lineage that is the fruit of grace and inclusion, hardship and mistakes, kindness and faithfulness, and lots of forgiveness. As Gerald C. Liu puts it, Jesus himself is kin to those who need his forgiveness most. The family of God, as it was for Jesus, is for each of us. That is the message the audience would have been primed to begin noticing by the specific names Matthew included and excluded. They would have glimpsed a slice of Matthew's vision that will unfold through the following chapters, that the family of God is bigger than they could ever imagine, and that their own access to God's grace was not dependent on their heritage or their fidelity to God's commands, and that now it's their turn not just to reap the blessings, but to own the responsibilities of this relationship with the God of justice and love and radical inclusion. Today is All Saints' Sunday, a day in which we honor the memory of those who have departed the world for the next. And whether you lit a candle or not, whether the tenderness is raw or a little more healed, whether the stories are beautiful or regrettable, you are holding someone in your heart today, likely multiple souls who've left an impression on you, made an impact, imprinted upon your own spirit, some for ill, but mostly, I hope, for good. And as terribly difficult as it may be for you this morning, maybe that is the message and hope for us today. Hidden within the nuances of Matthew's rote genealogy and your own resonant grief, you are the product, as Susan R. Andrews says, of all the people who nurture us and comfort us and protect us and change us. Whether our lives have been privileged or traumatic or somewhere in between, we all know the power of love that looks like belonging. Like a friend who visited when no one else did. Like a stranger who scared off the bully. Like the people who protested and advocated and took on hell to stand by you in the fight for your freedoms and safety and the justice you deserve. It shapes you. This kind of love. Those kind of people. It's the beautiful hope of this passage, and it's also the challenge to each of us this morning, that whether kin or friend, neighbor or stranger, or even our enemy, of the few things we actually can control in our life, we all can offer that. A place of belonging. That's our heritage. And that's our responsibility. To do our part, to try our best to make the world a better place by our kindness and love and openness. To continue the lineage of Jesus that previews heaven and looks like the family of God. Or as the cultural theologian Billy Joel put it, speaking of our ancestors and ourselves, we didn't start the fire, it was always burning since the world's been turning. And start the fire, thanks. No, we didn't light it, but we'll try to fight it. Joe Oakley, Carl York, Sarah Samson, Barbara Ward, Steve LVC, Kelsey, Jan, Miller, Shepard, Campbell Plans, Karen Guth, Colton, Dan, Thompson, Ann's, a few Joannes, Eleanor, Eli, August, and still more Anns. We didn't start the fire. It was always burning since the world's been turning. We didn't start the fire, but we did.